Welcome back once again from where we left off. Sorry for the short break-in. We're talking about the effect of the COVID-19 on the global, economy, and I've spoken a lot about the medical effect of this in the area of the medical sector. Now, it's also important to understand that protectionism is not really the way to go about things. When I talk about protectionism, I'm talking about countries trying to protect themselves, from the pandemic, where they try not to open up of the medical field, protectionism across various sectors, especially in the area of food security. Quite a number of countries have been trying to protect their economies, from what is happening, because they are not so sure as to what is going to happen next. China, for instance, has taken the stance, in trying to protect their economies and their citizens, from what might cause a problem, especially in the area of security. And so they are now inward looking in the area of food supply. And it is not just about China, but quite a number of other countries are also into this kind of protectionism by trying to focus only on themselves, only with respect to their countries. And that is one to understand, that in the area of food security can have enormous negative effects, across not only in domestic countries but across countries of the world. Because what happens then is that in this crisis, then there's going to be an increase in the price level of goods and services, because we all know that globalization in the area of opening up the economies by way of import and export increases competition in most countries. And when competition is increased, then it also increases the quality of the goods and services that are produced. And when the quality of services are produced out of competition, then at the end of the day, the consumers are able to get the best for their value for money that they used in buying these goods and services. But now, when trade from other parts of the world is being restricted in the name of protectionism, then we should expect the prices of goods and services to. And it is not every country that can be able to afford high prices of goods and services, especially in the developing world. And therefore, this can be a high burden on governments, where government will be expected to be able to budget suddenly to be able to take care of their own citizens in the area of providing free facilities. And this is exactly what is happening across the world. Why we need the international community to step in to see how best they can be able to support the developing countries that are not in a good position and able to fend for themselves. So protectionism is going to limit competition, number one. Protectionism is also going to increase the prices of goods and services in the area of food security. And it is therefore important to understand this, that removing this trade barrier will help continue increased competition across the world, so that the quality of goods and services that are being produced can really continue, and customers can be able to have the value for their money in terms of what they use their monies to buy. So that is one other aspect that I would want you to really understand. And now, in all these things, it is the developing world that suffers. In other words, those in the emerging economies, for instance, those in the developing countries like Africa, they are the ones who are going to suffer, because they don't really have the capacity, especially when it comes to the production of certain key resources. And I've already mentioned one of them, especially in the area of the medical field. They don't really have the capacity. So if every country decides to be inward in the developing world, that are going to suffer. And when that happens, especially in the area of food security, and there's no competition, then you could see that most citizens in those countries will really have to struggle in able to get the standard of or the quality of food that they really need to be able to fend for themselves and their families. So other aspects of the problem that the pandemic is creating now, and what we expect it to create negatively, even after this crisis is over, if countries decide to continue to be inward looking. In fact, in most advanced countries, when there are shortages of resources, a country can ask producing firms to be able to scale up production. And that is what is happening in a lot of the advanced countries now. US has ordered a lot of medical resources to be increased by way of production, and quite a number of the countries in Europe are also doing the same. But in a lot of the developing world, like Afghanistan, the capacity is not there for the government even to request for a scale-up of production when it comes to certain key resources. And so when that happens, then these developing countries are limited, and they are going to continue to be limited if this continues to be the case. And so at this aspect of protectionism, protecting our economies from the local point of view should not be the way forward. I believe strongly that international trade is not the problem for this pandemic. International trade, I believe, is rather the solution to be able to solve this problem, because no one country has all the resources it takes to be able to overcome this problem. No one country can supply all the medical, all the skilled labor, and therefore no one country also has capacity to produce. We all need to depend on each other. So in this modern dependence, and the global dependence is key to be able to combat the crisis that is really going on, not only in the area of the medical field, which I've already spoken a lot about, but it's also in the area of other sectors of the economy. So we should never forget about this. Now, having spoken about the effect of this in the developing country like Afghanistan, it is also important to look at one aspect, especially in the area of trade finance. Because of what is happening, I would say that trade finance is almost dead in quite a number of countries, because banks are not ready to trade finance. When I talk about trade finance, I'm not talking about the normal inward trading that occurs within a country. I'm talking about the situation where financial institutions are able to grant loans on behalf of trade partners. And this has to do with trade across borders. So a bank will step in and provide the loan to be able to get goods and services being imported from other countries or being exported to other countries. And so at this point in time, this kind of transaction is almost dead, because the banks are not very comfortable, because they believe that quite a number of businesses are dying, and therefore they cannot risk in providing funds in taking care of some of this international trade financing. And so this is what is happening. And I know certain countries like Ghana, for instance, quite a number of the banks are frozen interest rates, so that consumers will not, or let me say, those who are at the receiving end of funds from the banks do not have to continue paying their loans based on interest that were charged. Some of the interest rates have been frozen, and in some other countries also there have been a lot of relaxation in the area of payment schedules. And some countries, I know for Ghana, for instance, some of the banks have taken the steps of allowing their clients not to be paying whatever is the loan schedule, but they should suspend it for maybe the next 3 months. And of course, if this is going to happen and it continues to happen in this way, then investors who put their money in these institutions are also going to be affected, because most investors put their money in the banks in the hope of being able to also get return on their investments. And if banks are now charging zero interest rates, which is not just happening in the developing world, but it's also happening in the advanced countries, then of course it is going to limit the funds that the banks receive, and be able to help a lot of economies. So that is one aspect of the problem. that is, that the COVID-19 is having in a lot of countries, not just in the developing world, but even in the advanced world. So like I have said before, that trade finance is almost dead, and because banks are not ready, to give loans, and it might take a while for this to come back even after the COVID-19 is over, because investment confidence is at the moment at zero. It will take a lot of new policies from most government to be able to boost investment confidence, to be able to boost foreign direct investment. And that is one other aspect we need to look at, that when it comes to foreign direct investment, a lot of countries have a lot of restrictive regulations, because the kind of measures that have to be taken in order to be able to allow the funds to flow into a particular country, whether to be able to set up a new production firm, or whether to be able to take over other firms, those kind of regulations, I believe, must be relaxed as we go along in this crisis, so that especially the developing can really encourage funds coming from abroad to help these economies, so that whatever they are losing in the boost crisis is over. So this is one aspect that I will expect that most countries really take of trade finance and foreign direct investment, because if this is not, we don't take care, if we don't take care, what is going to happen then is that quite a number of industries and quite a number of smaller firms that are struggling in this crisis are going to lose their firms and to foreign organizations who will come to buy over these firms. And that's number one. Number two, a lot of jobs are going to be lost. And that is one aspect that we also need to look at, the labor market, because quite a number of advanced countries, the US has already declared its stance that, look, they want to their own citizens, before taking care of the rest of the world. And so the US government, has announced that, look, the border is going to be closed, for the next 60 days or so, meaning that they are not going to receive international labor. They will want to make sure that those who have lost their jobs are going to be taken care of first before the government can take care of, other nations. And if other countries are supposed to follow in a similar trend, then it's really going to be worrying, because then a lot of these countries are really also going to lose out on highly skilled people to their country. End who benefit from this international labor mobility, and if this continues in this manner, then I'm afraid to say that quite produce at a rate that in think about. And so FDI is also one area which I think we should look at, the foreign direct investment. And this very session, I want to also aspect of education, what this crisis has done to education in terms of its contribution and in terms of its impact. We all know by now that countries all over the world in the area of in the higher education sector, have now turned their focus more on distance learning and online education. I believe that this is going to continue even after COVID-19, because quite a number of countries and quite a number of universities across the world that were very skeptical about online education, I believe strongly that their ideology, have been challenged. The ideologies have been challenged, and I believe that they are going to continue in this manner, where they will encourage that a lot of universities should be able to go along the line of online education. And I think all is an online education program and TV program, so that at least this can be able to take care of the whole country and even beyond Afghanistan. And that is one area that I believe strongly that we also need to focus on, and the impact of the COVID, in most economies after this whole crisis is over. So these are the few areas I wanted to share with you in the area of the medical sector, in the area of food security, which is agriculture sector, in the area of the education sector and the banking sector. In fact, I can continue on and on and on, but I would like to end over here and also take a few questions from you, and then as we go and see what happens. So thank you once again for for your time and for listening to me in this very hour. Thank you very much.